Lilia maneuvered the wheelchair onto the porch and settled herself beside it. Seated in the chair was her brother Fyodor, who had been bound to it for the last 2 years. Exhausted from her caretaking duties, Lilia resented her brother for the circumstances they found themselves in, and often felt like a bird trapped within a cage, yearning for freedom. "I am completely over it," she burst out, catching sight of Fyodor tightening his grip on the chair arms. Despite regretting her sharp outburst instantly, she was unable to hold back her frustrations. For 2 years, the siblings had shared a life at their summer cottage. Lilia tirelessly cared for Fyodor, ensuring his comfort, all the while neglecting her own desires. She harbored even harsher sentiments internally. Following her outburst, she apologized to her brother, yet, deep down, she still held him responsible for their plight. "What exactly are you tired of, Lilia?" Fyodor inquired. "Tired? Why didn't you just hire a caregiver then?" she retorted sarcastically. "And where's the money for that supposed to come from?" she scoffed. "We're already stretching thin on the rent from those 2 apartments, and bringing in a nurse would financially ruin us. Perhaps we could cut back on the rehab specialist," Fyodor suggested. "Then you could find a job, and we have some extra income." "And what about my life figure?" Lilia exclaimed. "I'm nearly 30. I should be thinking about marriage and starting a family. If I take that path, who will look after you? Who's going to afford a nurse? Will you?" "I am working," Fyodor mumbled. "It's just that I can't earn more with this outdated computer. With a better setup, I could easily cover all our expenses." "But where will the money for a new computer come from?" Lilia countered. "Your dreams are great, Fedya, but they are just that. Dreams. We're broke. All we have are those 2 apartments, this dacha, and each other." Lilia rose from her seat and strolled into the house, leaving her brother to savor the crisp morning air. This was part of their daily routine. Each morning, Lilia would rouse Fyodor, then they would do some stretching exercises. After that, they'd wash up, grab a bite to eat, and Lilia would either wheel her brother out onto the porch or take a walk with him along the garden path. Recently, these walks had become less frequent as the weather turned chilly, and loving a wheelchair-bound brother weighing 70 kilos wasn't a piece of cake. Lilia was worn out. Rarely did she voice her weariness to Fyodor, but deep down, she couldn't shake off the resentment. She held him accountable for the turn their lives had taken. Just 2 years ago, Fyodor had been like any other 23-year-old. Fresh out of college, he had landed a job at a top-tier 8 firm. He was making good money, enough to put down a deposit for a house, and before long, he had moved out of their parents' place. Within a year of starting his job, he had managed to clear his bank debt entirely, earning a reputation as an outstanding specialist in his field, and was highly sought after. Lily, while 4 years senior to Fyodor, couldn't claim the same levels of achievement in her career or personal affairs as her younger sibling. She had her share of romances with various men, yet each relationship inevitably hit a snag that halted further interaction. One paramour was already wed, the next unfaithful, and yet another balked at Lily's desire for marriage and children, as he yearned for a less tethered companionship. Professionally, Lily held the role of a simple economist at a nondescript company. Her performance was competent, though not dazzling, and her personal charm didn't exactly turn heads. Compared to her, Fyodor indeed outshone her distinctly. The tragic bind of Lily to a wheelchair stemmed from a vehicular mishap. That winter, during February, and shortly after Fyodor treated himself to a new car for the New Year's celebration, the entire kin, encompassing Lily, Fyodor, their parents, their offspring, and a host of relatives, had gathered to ring in the new year at the family dacha, where the siblings now resided. The atmosphere brimmed with joy, spirits were high, and everyone indulged in the festivities. Everyone except Fyodor, who stayed sober to drive the guests back. As the revelry stretched into the early hours of dawn, the parents decided to head home last. Exhaustion weighed on Fyodor, already past 5 in the morning, but despite the family's pleas, his father was adamant about not staying over. During an unfortunate squabble on the back seat, their mother voiced her displeasure, aggravating Lily, who found the petty quarrel on such a festive night particularly distasteful. Then the girl witnessed her mother's final living moment. While traveling towards the city, the driver lost control of the vehicle and collided with the truck, precisely where Fedor and their mother were seated. Tragically, the woman perished on impact, leaving Fedor with disabilities. Furthermore, their father found himself confined to the hospital for numerous months, eventually succumbing to a severe illness. Initially, the ailment began as a common cold, which then progressed into pneumonia, and later transformed into edema, forcing the man into an unbreakable coma. As if Fedor was oblivious to his own guilt, Lilia deliberately assigned him the blame for their parents' demise. Consequently, Fedor received a conditional sentence, taking into account the circumstances and his mental state. Meanwhile, Lilia found herself burdened with the responsibility of caring for her brother, a situation that arose due to his inadvertent role in their parents' tragic fate. Unfortunately, their sibling relationship failed to flourish harmoniously. Fedor possessed a composed and stable nature, a reflection of his mother's influence. Conversely, Lilia embodied a passionate and restless demeanor, persistently dissatisfied with various aspects of her life. Fedor even contemplated how his sister's temperament hindered her ability to prioritize and address her own concerns, as her preoccupation with his well-being took precedence. Lilia was fatigued. She had put in a lot of effort in rehabilitating her brother, but she still felt the need to find him a caregiver. That morning, when Fyodor sat on the porch while she went into the house, marked a fateful turning point in resolving this matter. "I agree," said Lilia's brother. "I'll find you a nurse and I'll move to the city myself. I'll find a job, rent a room, and visit you. Please forgive me, Fedor, but my strength and patience have reached their limits." "I understand and agree with your reasoning," replied Fyodor. "Let everything be as you propose. I can see how difficult it has become for you, and I do not blame you for anything." A week later, a girl named Nina moved into the dacha. She may have been short and unappealing, but she was highly skilled in her field, just like Fyodor was in his. When Lilia entrusted her brother to Nina's care, she did not anticipate any problems. During the 3 days that her sister stayed in the house alongside the nurse and her brother, Lilia witnessed how actively Nina got involved in their routine. She practiced with Fyodor, accompanied him on walks, and assisted him with his work. With a clear conscience, Lilia departed for the city. A week later, she engaged in a romantic encounter with a different admirer, whom she deemed her soulmate, envisioning a shared future together. However, it soon came to light that the gentleman struggled with alcoholism. Upon discovering the extent of his inebriation in his own residence, Lilia was taken aback, horrified by the spectacle of her new partner's capacity for drink. Disheartened by yet another romantic setback, she resolved that immersing herself in her career would be preferable to venturing into another romantic liaison. Distraught from the ordeal, Lilia retreated to her country house. Upon arrival, she was immediately struck by an unexpected sight. Fedor was on his feet. The medical professionals had postulated that such progress might be feasible, but not before 3 years of vigorous rehabilitation. Yet here it was, barely past 2 years, and Fedor was already standing. Supported by Nana's shoulder, he ambled forward tentatively. His legs were still weak and somewhat uncooperative, but his determination was evident in every shaky step. "What a remarkable development!" exclaimed Lilia, as she caught sight of the glance that Fedor threw at Nina. Lilia instantly grasped the situation. Her brother had fallen in love. Craving female attention, he swiftly directed his focus towards the demure Nina, who was doing her utmost to assist him. Lilia felt annoyed and once again harbored resentment towards her brother for outpacing her in matters of the heart. Even his accelerated recovery failed to elicit joy from his sister. A few more weeks passed, and Lilia decided to pay an unexpected visit to the country house. What she encountered left her utterly astounded. Fedor was peacefully slumbering next to Nina on the very bed their parents once used when they were still alive and resided at the dacha. "What on earth is happening here?" roared Lilia, utterly dumbfounded by the scene before her. "What do you mean?" responded Nina, instantly springing up from the bed and darting aimlessly around the room, not knowing where to find support. Lilia screamed, stomped her feet, and it didn't immediately register in her mind that her brother was moving about on crutches, despite having been confined to a chair for the past 2.5 years. "Don't yell, Lilia," calmly pleaded Fyodor. "Your shouting will only give you a headache, and it won't accomplish anything. You're sleeping with your nanny. What am I paying her for? To please you in bed?" That's when Nina intervened. "You don't need to pay. Fedor has recovered. If you had reached out to the doctors, you would have been informed. I can take care of him for free because we have feelings for each other," Nina concluded, exchanging a meaningful glance with her sister. "Yes, Lilia, it can happen. People can love each other, in case you've forgotten." Lilia's face turned as red as a beet. She stomped her foot once again. "Are you insinuating that I'm a heartless doormat that everyone takes advantage of? By the way, you've taken advantage of me too, brother. I've taken care of you for more than 2 years, and you're the one who killed our parents. You're the reason they're dead." Fyodor spoke quietly. "It wasn't because of me." Lilia stared at him in surprise. "What do you mean it wasn't because of you? Tell me about the truck that was in its lane and accidentally hit your car." Fyodor replied, "My father was driving. I didn't want to tell you until now. Honestly, I was tired of the accusations. And since my father is already dead, there was no point in hiding the truth." The color had drained from the young woman's cheeks, leaving her pallid and trembling. Fixated on Fyodor, her eyes wide in disbelief as he disclosed appalling revelations. "Father, you're deliberately twisting words now. He's dead. There's nothing you can prove." "I don't intend to prove anything. That evening, Dad convinced me to hand over the keys to him. Indeed, it was negligent of me to allow an intoxicated man to take the wheel, but I was utterly exhausted by their incessant arguing and just gave in. He crashed into the truck, then begged me to swap seats." "Why?" Lilia gazed at her brother, baffled. "It's because Dad had previously had an accident where someone was injured. He got a suspended sentence then, but this time he would have faced serious charges. Perhaps if I hadn't agreed to switch from the passenger to the driver's seat, my back wouldn't be in such bad shape. But I did as Dad asked. And well, here we are with the consequences as clear as day." Lilia stealthily exited the room and made her way to the kitchen. She took a seat at the table, burying her head in her arms. The reality of what she had just heard sunk in. Every bit of it was accurate. She was aware of the accident involving her father's mistress, one amongst several. As she had painfully learned, the notion that her father might have requested his son to step into his shoes didn't seem far-fetched to her either. Such was their father, cowardly, pitiful, and now dead. Fyodor approached Lilia from behind, gently placing an arm around her shoulders. Lilia let out a sob and turned to him, astonished. "You're on your feet. This has to be some kind of miracle. It's Nina who performs wonders," Fyodor responded with a grin, carefully taking a seat opposite his sister. "Do you trust me?" She gave a slight nod. "Yes, I do. I regret the words I uttered. I should be overjoyed for your recovery, yet I made a scene. I'm truly sorry." They made up and then chuckled for ages, reminiscing about the time Lilia barged into the bedroom while Fedor and Nina were lounging. Nina laughed too, then out of the blue remarked, I've never come across such an odd sibling duo. Odd? Fadel grinned. We're not odd, we are the closest knit. Lilia grinned through her tears. She felt a mix of embarrassment and pride for her brother. For the first time ever, she felt this unique and heartwarming sensation.